All right, so Fannie Mae, what is driving the increasing importance that consumers place on their homes? This is an interesting, really interesting report. It is 66 pages long, and it's going to be hard. Impossible to cover it all. Yes, there is going to be some stuff that I leave out, but I do think that the overall questions that they have are fairly similar throughout. So they're like, what are you looking for when you're looking for a home? Are you looking for your home's location? Is that what's made the home more important to you? Is it a sense of security? Is it entertainment, leisure time? Is it your access to outdoor living? Or is it your home as a financial asset? Now, I believe when I first clicked on this, I'm like, well, yeah, home's more important because it's worth more. In the past 5 years, home values have gone up like 50%. So that'd be enough for me to say, yeah, it's about 50% more important than it used to be. But this gets into things that are beyond that. I don't want to get into that circular logic too, because if a home's more important, you will pay for it, and then it's more important because you pay for it. But beyond that, it does break it down into little these things that people like. Do you want walkability, or do you want your home for rental income? So there's these different factors here. I am fighting the urge again to say it's worth more money, but that's fine. I do like this throwback that they have early on to the kind of pre-pandemic idea of what people wanted from their home. They talk about, they say in the post-pandemic world, many consumers are using their homes in different ways than they previously did. These changes can include adapting a home to accommodate lifestyle changes, functional needs for work, schooling, and hobbies, or multi-generational living so that families can live under the same roof. Well, just starting with this lifestyle changes, I liked that they said lifestyle changes such as a desire or need to grow food and raise animals, which I like. It's a kind of leading off with some interesting details. And I'll admit this makes me feel a little bit sheltered, a little out of it. I feel like a city boy because I wanted to be able to grow a vegetable garden in my house, but I do too much shade. I can't do it. I think chicken coops also great, but I can't really imagine that it's a deal breaker for most people if they can't grow their food at home. I do like this quote. I wish I had the page numbers here, but I'm going to go to the quote.
I think where the chickens become the deal breaker for the people moving into the neighborhood, not.
Yeah, exactly. And if there's like a rooster in the neighborhood, yeah, there's someone that we know is dealing with that with that specifically. Now this is a quote from a renter who says, "I have sowed a garden. I have learned my way around the city with this home as my center. I have made memories in this home. I like my neighbors." I think that's some poetry. First of all, I wasn't expecting that, and I am floored. Put that in put some end lines in there, maybe some artistic dashes. That's really good. Okay. Sorry, I gotta calm myself. As rare as this wordplay is, it's also kind of less common to find renters placing more value in general on the home. The real jumps here were among homeowners who thought that the homes were more important, and comparatively, renters did not say that their home was as important. So home ownership more important, less important. So renters, I'm looking to see how it jumped, and they have this data broken down across a lot of different pages, and that was actually one small frustration is I'd like to see a little bit more in time, but it appears that their comparison points in this survey were 2015 and Q3 2024. So that's just a reminder here. However, so I am sure that there are plenty of people where growing food at home is a top priority. Some people grow food and sell it at home. That's great. I think, though, that it is page 18, for instance, forces me to consider the conflation of gardening, non-foods like flowers, maybe your ornamental bushes, or like a hosta, and the food type gardening, which may need more sun and space. Like I said, I wish I had a vegetable garden, not enough sun for that. I think so 60% want a garden space, but really only 46% would be willing to pay more for it. So that's there's a little bit of a bifurcation there. Also, 61% are willing to pay a little bit more for outdoor living spaces, and 18% of them. So again, here we go. 60%, yeah, oh yeah, that's really important. But then you scroll down to, all right, do you actually use it? It's 18%. So that's a gap of, let's say, 42%. 42% of optimism there that you say that you're going to grow it, but instead all you're really doing is mowing your lawn. And now you're like, that's a lot of work, and that's fine. But let's go to something a little bit more utilitarian, something I can identify with. And I do want to say that all of this stuff about vegetable gardens and stuff, it is purely out of jealousy. I wish that I could do it, but that's fine. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to move houses because of it. But on to more functional needs, which is for work, schooling, and hobbies. I think that this one really checks out. And it is, there was this story this was the actual real story that was told and retold in the early moments of the pandemic for a couple years, really was like, oh, now everyone's going back to the home. They are increased in the apartment market. The unit size increased because maybe we said, oh, maybe there's a Zoom room now. Remember Zoom room? There was that big moment, right, where a bunch of people were kind of staying at home, decorating a house, remodeling a little bit, but there was definite, from a work standpoint, you were doing more in your home, and therefore it was more valuable because it was supplanting the office. There was something that I could understand there. Domestic vibes, very strong. And let's look at page 13 to see how people then use their house here. So this is a functional changes of the home. The number one functional change here was working remotely from the home at 25%. 19% then using home for hobby. Growing food to eat or gardening, that's, again, there's that 18%. Learning remotely from home, 13%. Multi-generational, 10%, and so on. So 55% made functional changes to their home or lifestyle at home. 45% were unchanged. I don't know if I believe this because everyone changes, right? I don't know. Functional changes, though. And some of these smaller ones are keeping animals that provide food or income at 5%. That's frankly a little bit larger than I thought, but that's okay. Multi-generational living so that family members can live together under one roof. Now, that may seem that is less identifiable as like a major narrative, but I do remember during the beginning of the pandemic when everyone was kind of moving to their hometown or moving in with their parents or something like that. So that was a very real trend. And I don't know if it has continued as before or if this is a long-term trend. Again, I would love to see how things track over time here. But a decent reminder then of all of these factors that precipitated from the upheaval of the pandemic. Is there anything, and also I think, breaking down these things that connect you to the home, whether it is, maybe some people do like their home because that's where their chickens live. But I think breaking them down, you get to some stuff that is perfectly applicable to renters. For instance, I'm harping so much about gardening, but it seems like more people want to be a gardener if they are renters than if. So renters, and I'm thinking they're imagining a home, right? Like, oh, wow, when I get a home, I'm going to have a vegetable garden. And homeowners, less so. Is like, when I have my next home, it's going to be a vegetable garden. So this little O here on the 67% for renters that value that space, that means it's statistically significant, more so than homeowners. So this is 67% compared to 56% of owners. So a lot of these renters want a garden. Does that mean that an apartment community should have space for, maybe not a garden, but like we talked about how we could build in like yards for people if it was a first floor, that we could like fence off an area so that someone could have like a small yard that was outdoors on the first floor of an apartment building. That's something I think that's kind of cool. But we'll see. And this may also be a bunch of renters not yet being homeowners and saying like, oh yeah, it's really important. And then the homeowners are like, yeah, well, I thought it was important, but now all I do is mow the lawn. So I don't know,
Yeah.
There's like reality and not, but there are plenty of people that are good at gardening, and one day that will be me. I'm going to figure it out. I gotta figure out a spot with enough sunlight, but. So that is, it's worth really checking out all 66 pages of this. There's really a lot here. And they break it down in a bunch of different ways and so it's not just the stuff that I've said. They talk about how important closer proximity to workplace is, closer proximity to public transportation. And I said before, for renters, walkability is a lot more of a factor, and that makes I think that makes sense to me because, well, maybe they're in public transportation more among the renters. They're probably more likely to not have a car versus homeowners, but that's another thing. So I think some of these are also, income levels too. You have to factor in what are the demographics we're looking at. Maybe younger people are more renters and they want more room for hobbies versus homeowners. There's just different factors. They all break it down here, and I was really happy to see this report, and so we'll have that in the notes here. All right, so moving on. Sorry.
I think the biggest or the most significant piece to that, if you go to the anecdotes of why things are more important or what they were valuing, the last one, owning our house outright has protected us from the dramatic increase in home prices and rental costs since 2020. Feels like being in a safe, solid bunker in a war zone. I think the majority of the people in this, or statistically speaking, but I think the people in here that are feeling as if their homes are more important to them, like they can say it's a garden or whatever.
Yep.
That's the biggest.
Oh, yeah,
I would have to think that it's
totally
out the biggest, especially
totally
if
agree.
they bought in 2020 where everything's gone up, but my mortgage payment is the same.
Yeah.
Or if they locked into 2018, 2019. They refinance, like something, just anything that they got out of it, because that is a big thing. And I also think, I can speak this as somebody that went from an apartment complex to renting a house. You're not yes, you are paying attention to the rent and what that does, but I'm not paying for a parking space. I'm not paying for different fees that come with your apartment complexes. So I think that is just if anybody is feeling like really bullish about home ownership, I think that has to be just the biggest is they have fixed rate financing, advantageous financing.
And you see that in home sales numbers too, that this is what they're acting on.
And I think the last part really speaks to it, and they say it feels like being in a safe, solid bunker in a war zone when everything around you is getting more and more expensive, and you're hearing about how unaffordable it is to rent or to now buy a home. And you were able to do that 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
And your rates have stayed the same. You're not.
Oh yeah, you're completely insulated.
So I think that's.
You're buying before home prices and before rates went up significantly. Then you could talk about chickens all you want. I'm 2% interested in my home because of chickens that I imaginarily have. That's me.
So I think I would say that's the biggest, and then I also wonder how many of these are renters that it falls along what you said of. People that have been living in a studio apartment for way too long, or a one bed, or just in a cramped situation, and they fall in love with the idea of I'm going to have a vegetable garden. Yeah, I think there's plenty of people, especially my age, that fall in love with the aspects of home ownership, and that all goes away when you have a roof problem, and that's
called
all
home. That's homegrown ownership.
Yeah,
I learned that early on. I like this other quote too. Housing costs around me have risen, and I cannot afford to leave. That's a renter.
I would imagine your house would become more important to you if that's the reality you're facing.
Yeah, or this is a renter, and it's like, this is where I am, There's nothing, that's the flip side, to the people that have enjoyed these price increases are the renters that don't necessarily enjoy them at all. And rent has gone up a little less than home prices, but rent has gone up. You can't ignore that. So
now, one thing, and this has been touched on by different people throughout that just kind of cover this. It's wild when they start these conversations off by still doing post-pandemic.
Yeah.
You're kind of like in that groove of like, okay, post-pandemic. We're at the 5-year mark.
Yeah.
Since the pandemic took off. I wonder how much of this is people that how many people in the survey, they got into the housing market for the first time in 2020 and they hit it big by like getting into affordable situation with a low rate and everything that we mentioned. they don't really have a frame of reference to say, okay, had I done this
Yeah.
in 2015, but then also when I enter this back in, like what's their range of data points? Because if you got in at you got in at the right time, but you don't have anything to reference back to, and all you hear is it's expensive, it's expensive, it's expensive. That
Yeah.
has to create some sort of like we kind of have to stay here,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we can't really afford it.
And
Otherwise.
they do break it down from like mortgage borrowers to outright owners, and you can look and see, let's so for people 65 plus, my home offers a sense of security in uncertain times. 18% of 65 plus say that's more than the 15% of people, maybe first time home buyers at 35 to 44. Yeah, so I'm not really positive. I do think though that your major point about the real factor here is that home prices used to be home prices have gone up so dramatically that people feel like they've got all these kind of unrealized gains, or at least like there will be such a negative to moving that the home is kind of a sanctuary. So.
Yeah,